Good morning, guys. We'll be with you in about 2 minutes.
So, Ashley Babbitt article first or Revolver?
That's a good question. What do you think, guys? Do we start with Ashley Babbitt or do we start with Revolver?
I think we start with Babbitt, and because that will allow us to transition over into the larger point we intend to make today.
There we go. And let's do it. And good morning.
Good morning.
Look at that. Maul with first blood this morning. That's
It's flattering.
That's a good start. Love you, Mom. And I see, not only do I see Jamie and Megan in the chat there, I see, what the hell are you talking about?
Keep going.
I see that Jamie replied to Megan, "Morning, babe." And that's right. This is the show where couples communicate with one another, and I like that. I see Danny and Trish. Good morning, ladies. Good morning. Good to see you. And Steve, happy Epiphany.
Hey, how about this? No, Cranberry. It's the 6th of January. A treasonous plot of insurrection, but not.
Not bad.
It's the best I could do. Like, 6th of January just doesn't have the ring to it that the 5th of November
doesn't.
does. Also, nobody actually tried to blow anything up on the 6th of January.
Right.
So, there's...
remember the 5th of November when I killed a terrorist for my mother's birthday. I like that one.
It doesn't rhyme. But, not all poetry has to rhyme.
Oh, and Maul says it's my cousin Sam's birthday. So, happy birthday, Sam. It would actually give me a real chuckle to see him watch the show for so many reasons.
So yeah.
Trish, it took him all shit this morning. The whole time.
Stop. Hey, I haven't even gone to the bathroom yet this morning, okay? So just... Okay. However, it is the 6th of January, and a couple of things today. Steve calls it Non-Surrection Day, which I think is fantastic. That's pretty good.
Wildly appropriate.
It's also when our strike, current strike, let's see how long we can go.
It is supposed to expire today. And I looked it up earlier. I'm gonna actually show you guys a little behind the scenes, the
active community guideline strikes.
So
we still have the one.
So this is a warning, the one with Stacey Abrams, and my appeal was rejected. And I honestly, if I could probably pursue that, but it would have to go to court. So you see the strike from October the 8th that said medical misinformation, you liars. By the way, this strike is a crime which was committed by YouTube. So when somebody states an opinion and then it's rebutted with action, making a fact claim, that's one thing. But it's a fact claim versus an opinion claim for it to be considered medical misinformation. So for YouTube to make a fact claim that my opinion is medical misinformation is YouTube practicing medicine without a license. That's a serious crime, YouTube. But this strike should fall off today.
Or it was gonna before you said all that.
Yeah, bring it.
To be fair, though, there's probably a whole bunch of channels that are doing shows
and we'll see
today.
you in February.
To be fair, though, there's probably a whole bunch of channels today that are going to be doing shows that are eventually going to get shadow banned or strikes.
Oh, yeah.
That, it's going to just take, for once, it's going to take the content ID bots a little while to catch up with everything.
Good luck, comrades.
Of course, what else could we talk about? I mean, honestly, what are we going to talk about every January 6th from this point forward?
Epiphany.
Yeah, I had an epiphany.
An apostrophe.
I think you mean an epiphany.
Lightning just struck my brain.
That must hurt. Oh, man, puns. Gotta love them. Gotta love them.
Thinking's a bad habit, Shmi. I shouldn't do so much of it.
Of all of Steven Spielberg's movies, that's the one he's the most disappointed in.
Because it only had 3 sets?
Yes.
Which, I'll tell you something, if you've never made a movie, having only 3 sets, especially on that kind of a budget, would be a blessing. Oh my God.
Okay, so,
so much to get to, and hey, I'm off-ish today.
Yeah. So, first things first, one of the big narratives that collapsed immediately, because if you guys have watched our channel for a while, you will remember that on January 7th of the previous year, Chris and I actually got into a pretty heated discussion about exactly what happened on January 6th. And it turns out that there are certain parts of the narrative that I'd been suckered into. I would still say, and will still say to this point, that going inside the Capitol was a piss-poor idea. It gave the left and the powers that be everything they needed to craft a narrative. But, you know, what's funny is that one part of my analysis is proven to be more correct than I ever anticipated. Because, oh boy.
Yep.
And for a long time, they called it the deadly attack on the Capitol.
They still are. That is still being repeated as recently as yesterday.
However, nobody was beat to death with a fire extinguisher.
Nope, that was a lie.
That was a lie.
And to be clear, that was not an error. That was not a mistake.
Lie.
That was an absolute willful fabrication of facts that was told by most of your mainstream media outlets. And even when it was reported against the very next day that was false, those same outlets produced more articles talking about the quote-unquote murder.
The deadly attack on the Capitol.
The quote-unquote murder of Officer Sicknick. And finally, I think it was just over 2 weeks before, for example, the New York Times actually issued a correction. Not a retraction, but a correction. And in their correction, they did not admit that they were wrong. They spun it as it has come to our attention. New facts have come to light. No. New facts came to light that day and were widely reported in multiple alternative media outlets within hours.
Like us.
Turned out to be absolutely true. Sicknick didn't even die on the day. It was the next day, and it was unrelated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's funny, though, suddenly the Democrats loved them some cops, like, overnight, you know? Like, just bing. Oh, yeah, that's why we have these guys here. Whoops. Okay. So, I'd actually like to read this one, if that's okay with you, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we are going to start with this cute little article that the AP put out about Ashley Babbitt. Only person to actually die as a direct result of what happened last January 6th, okay?
And 6 months later, the officer that murdered her went on the talk shows and explained to the world how he was a hero. And this girl was going to kill all the Congress people unless he shot her. Yeah.
Meanwhile, no. We'll get there. Okay, so Ashley Babbitt, a martyr. Her past tells a more complex story. Hey, spoiler alert. Remember the headline, okay? The first time Celeste Norris laid eyes on Ashley Babbitt, the future insurrectionist had just rammed her vehicle 3 times with an SUV and was pounding on the window, challenging her to a fight. Norris says the bad blood began in 2015 when Babbitt engaged in a months-long extramarital affair with Norris's longtime live-in boyfriend. When she learned of the relationship, Norris called Babbitt's husband and told him she was cheating. Okay, so I've actually read this article a couple of times, and that love triangle right there, quadrangle, whatever you want to call it, it's what it is. It's a messy situation, matter of the heart. Okay. She pulls up yelling and screaming, Norris said in an exclusive interview with the Associated Press, recounting the July 29th, 2016 road rage incident in Prince Frederick, Maryland. It took me a good 30 seconds to figure out who she was. Just all sorts of expletives telling me to get out of the car. She was going to beat my ass. Terrified and confused, Norris dialed 911 and waited for law enforcement. Babbitt was later charged with numerous misdemeanors. The attack on Norris is an example of erratic and sometimes threatening behavior by Babbitt, who was shot by a police officer while at the vanguard of the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. Former President Donald Trump and his supporters have sought to portray her as a righteous martyr who was unjustly killed. George Floyd! Trump has called her an incredible person and even taped a posthumous birthday greeting to her in October. Trump has also demanded the Justice Department reinvestigate Babbitt's death, though the officer who shot her was cleared of any wrongdoing by 2 prior federal investigations. But the life of the Air Force veteran from California who died while wearing a Trump campaign flag wrapped around her shoulders like a cape was far more complicated than the heroic portrait presented by Trump and his allies. In the months before her death, Babbitt had become consumed by pro-Trump conspiracy theories and posted angry screeds on social media. She also had a history of making violent threats. Babbitt, 35, was fatally shot while attempting to climb through a broken window of a barricaded door leading to the Speaker's lobby inside of the Capitol, where the police officers were evacuating members of Congress from the mob supporting Trump's false claim that the 2020 presidential election was stolen. God, this article is a masterclass, is it not, sir?
Oh, yeah.
She was one of 5 people who died during or immediately after the riot. But that's another great sentence, isn't it?
During or immediately
after the riot.
I'm going to pause you here and back up. I want you to remember Charlottesville. For weeks and weeks on end, we heard after Charlottesville about the 4 or 5 police officers that were killed in the violence at Charlottesville. Remember that?
You mean the helicopter crash?
A helicopter crashed 5 miles away. By all reports, the result of pilot error. It's not as if some terrifying white supremacist was launching RPGs from the crowd and shooting down police helicopters. But that was what they meant to insinuate, and carefully tried to do so. And listed that the 4 or 5 officers were killed by the protesters, by the Trump supporters. And the Unite the Right guys, not big Trump fans, by the way. Go do a little research on that. But
yeah,
we
like
were
all
spun
200 or
this
300
narrative
of them that showed up, by the big massive rally that had 300 people. Yeah.
And we were spun this narrative that these several police officers were killed in the protest. It was a lie. And again, just like this right here, she was one of 5 people who died during or immediately after the riot, including a Capitol police officer. She was one of 1 people who died that day.
Exactly. And look, here's the difference between a lie and a mistake. I made a mistake on January 7th because I had bad information. And as soon as I had better information, I said, I made a mistake. I now have better information. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. It's good faith. So, it gets better, y'all. It gets better, y'all. We ain't even got to the revolver article yet, but there's a reason why all this set up.
And you know what? I'm game to go over a little bit today so we can deal with the revolver article well.
Okay. On social media, Babbitt identified as a libertarian and ardent supporter of the Second Amendment. Her posts included videos of profane rants against Democrats, COVID-19 mask mandates, and illegal immigration. So she just became like 10 times as sexy to me personally. Her Twitter account, which was taken down after her death, was rife with references to the QAnon conspiracy theory, which centers around the baseless belief that Trump has secretly battled deep state enemies and a cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibals that includes prominent Democrats who operate a child sex trafficking ring. Like, I don't know, Ghislaine Maxwell. Nothing will stop us, tweeted Babbitt January 5th.
Let me come back to this Q thing real quick. The secretly battled deep state enemies and a cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibals that includes prominent Democrats who operate a sex trafficking ring. Here's what we do know. Okay, Q, the whole QAnon thing, was a joke. Okay, black propaganda of the highest order. And we can see how this person, this writer, is deeply involved with the QAnon hoax. Because what we see here, secretly battled deep state enemies and a cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibals that includes prominent Democrats who operate a child sex trafficking ring, is an intentional maneuver to conflate 3 completely distinct things. The deep state, that there is a child sex trafficking problem, and the idea of a cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibals are three separate things.
With different levels of believability.
And I don't see any real significant evidence of a cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibals that we have to take deep concern with. However, that there are just an absolute myriad of unelected bureaucrats,
Peter Strzok and Lisa Page,
who are running our country through
James Comey.
Right, who are running our country through policy and regulation maneuvers,
Dr. Fauci,
which are explicitly counterpointed by the requirements of law and forbidden thereby in many cases. Like, for example, I don't know, a mortgage moratorium, a rent moratorium, a completely illegal act taken by unelected bureaucrats. Right, that's what is meant by the phrase deep state. You're talking about the levers of power that are controlled by people who are unelected, long entrenched, and if not deeply corrupt, which many of them are, but not all of them, even those that are not deeply corrupt are at least interested. They at least have their own self-interest in retaining the power and the pay, the taxpayer money that comes from that. Hey Steve, get on that band hammer if you would, please. We've got a comrade. The next one there that's conflated is the existence of a prominent child sex trafficking ring.
And there obviously was
There's
one.
no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, like, Jeffrey Epstein totally committed suicide, and Ghislaine Maxwell is going to face up to 60 years in prison because there's absolutely a sex trafficking ring. And Prince Andrew swears up and down he never sweated all over that little girl because he can't sweat.
Yeah.
Sure thing, buddy. Sure thing.
I'm sure he sleeps under the porch in July.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Is it hot in here?
Okay.
So, they've taken three things, two of which are absolutes, are uncontrovertibly real things, and a third one that seems absurd, and conflated them to paint the idea that if any person believes in any one of these things, then they must believe in all three of them simultaneously, and that makes them crazy.
Well, all right. So, I'm really going to attempt to chew through the rest of this so we can move on, but there's a huge point, and there's a reason why we've gone through this whole thing, okay? Watch this trick that these sumbitches are pulling on you with this article, okay? Watch this, as my old preacher Barry Snap used to say. Watch this. Nothing will stop us, tweeted Babbitt January 5th. They can try and try, but the storm is here and is descending upon D.C. in less than 24 hours, dark to light. Among Q followers, the storm refers to the predicted day Trump would finally unmask the pedophile cabal, arrest and execute those deemed traitors. Jesus, this is amazing. This is the third time I've read it, and I'm still blown away by how well it's done. Arrest and execute those deemed traitors and restore America to greatness. Trump has repeatedly insisted Babbitt was murdered, because she was, and she has achieved martyr status among Trump supporters. Her name and likeness now appear on T-shirts and flags at pro-Trump rallies. A Maryland personal injury lawyer representing Babbitt's husband, Aaron Babbitt, has raised $375,000 through a Christian crowdfunding site and has threatened to file a lawsuit against Capitol Police. Key to that wrongful death claim is the contention that Babbitt, a former military police officer who was 5'2" and weighed 115 pounds, would have peacefully surrendered had Capitol officers attempted to arrest her. Aaron Babbitt declined to comment in October when a reporter knocked on the door of the San Diego apartment he shared with Ashley and another woman. In a June interview with Tucker Carlson of Fox News, Babbitt said he has been sickened by some of what has been written about his deceased wife. There's never been a person that Ashley ran across in her daily life that didn't love her. That's not how Norris felt about her. Court records involving the violent 2016 confrontation between Babbitt and Norris have previously been reported on by media outlets, including the AP. But Norris, now 39, agreed to speak about it publicly for the first time in an interview with the AP and shared previously unreported details. She has also provided documents and photos from the crash scene to support her account. Norris was in a 6-year relationship with Aaron Babbitt when she learned he was cheating on her with a married co-worker from his job as a security guard at a nuclear power plant near Chesapeake Bay. So now remember, Ashley Babbitt's not just a piece of shit, so is Aaron Babbitt. Remember that, okay? Just the AP wants you to remember that. She eventually found out about the other woman was Ashley McEntee, who at the time went by the last name of her then husband. He was telling me about his foul-mouthed chick that's on his shift, blah, 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 Norris recounted. Come to find out a few months later, they were basically having this relationship while they were at work. When she learned of the affair, she reached out to Babbitt's husband, Timothy McEntee. You know, I was just trying to keep my home life together, she said. Norris said she tried for months to salvage her relationship with Aaron Babbitt before finally deciding to move out of the house. Within days, Norris said Ashley moved in. A few weeks later, Norris saw an SUV pull in a U-turn before speeding up behind her. She recounts that the SUV's driver began swerving erratically, laying on the horn and attempting to pass a Chevrolet Suburban that was between the two on a narrow 2-lane road. When the driver of the Chevy pulled over, Norris said the white Ford SUV accelerated and rammed into her rear bumper. She said that the SUV rammed her a second time and then a third, all while the vehicles continued to roll down the road. After Norris dialed 911, an emergency dispatcher advised her to pull up over the shoulder and stop. As she waited for help, Babbitt got out of her vehicle and came up to Norris's driver's side window, banging on the glass. Norris said the force of the impact caused her seatbelt buckle to lock tight, preventing her from getting out of the car. Within minutes, deputies arrived. A case report from Calvert County Sheriff's Office obtained by the AP shows Ashley Babbitt was issued a criminal summons on charges of reckless endangerment, a misdemeanor defined...
Yes, Steve.
Yet a misdemeanor defined under Maryland law as engaging in conduct that creates a substantial risk of death or serious physical injury and is punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. She was also charged with malicious destruction of property for the damage of Norris's vehicle. Court records show those charges were later updated to include traffic offenses, reckless driving, negligent driving, and failure to control a vehicle speed to avoid a collision. Photos from the scene...
To avoid a collusion?
Yeah, do a collusion. Photos from the scene provided by the AP, yes. Show Babbitt's white Ford Explorer with its front bumper smashed in. The SUV's grill is also pushed up and the hood indented. The rear bumper of Norris's Escape is pushed in on the passenger side and with the detached Maryland license plate. The front bumper of Babbitt's SUV wedged into it. Following the...
Okay, there's a lot more article here, and we're...
Okay, all right. Because, well, the reason why I was chewing through it is there's the money shot paragraph here. Let's see. A copy of the altercation weeks after the incident. No transcript. February. Man, dadgummit. There is a lot more. Oh, see, and it's almost done. Look, the point is, okay, we've gone through all that article, and I'm looking for the exact thing. There's a thing that the AP points out almost at the bottom of the article where most people would have quit reading. All these charges against Ashley Babbitt were dismissed.
Right.
Okay? Now, they could have been dismissed in some kind of a pretrial motion, which is not at all uncommon for to have happen if there's extenuating circumstances. Like, maybe some family drama. Just saying, it's not at all uncommon for these things to. So it's possible.
I mean, let's be real. It sounds like this Norris chick is trash too.
Yeah, I mean, she sounds like she's just a ton of fun to be around. Okay, and so, but whatever. Okay, but here's the thing, right? The charges were dismissed. Now, at the same time, okay, it's okay to say. Actually, don't. In fact, the left is saying, "Dear right wing, all your martyrs are monsters."
Well, we've got the one.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's all.
And it's a pretty little white girl that was murdered by a black cop who was completely exonerated by his peers. But let's be clear. If here's the real bones of why this story is important. I want you to understand. If this story matters, if Ashley Babbitt's background is somehow pertinent to the situation where she was murdered by a police officer, quite obviously, I mean, unlike Floyd, who overdosed while attacking police officers,
was it? Even if he didn't overdose, he was in the middle of like committing a crime on top of a crime, and then was resisting arrest, which is a third crime. That's like three layers of crime.
Exactly. It's like a 16th wall break. I mean, the guy got busted selling drugs. The guy got busted in the middle of a drug deal because he took a break in the middle of his drug deal to go buy cigarettes with a counterfeit 20, and then tried to hit a cop.
Yeah, I mean, basically.
And by tried, what I mean is he kicked one in the sternum while shoving his way through the police car and forcing himself voluntarily onto the ground while insisting I need to lay down on the ground. And then overdosed from more fentanyl than it takes to cause a person to overdose. And we were told that his record, which included beating a pregnant woman violently with a gun.
We're not 100% sure she was pregnant, but...
Yeah, we are.
Oh, I thought there was some question about that. But, I mean, look...
Okay, she may not have still been pregnant after he met her.
Okay, well, look,
he beat her a lot.
Well, I mean, armed robbery, again, that's one of those things. It's like...
But here's the point. If Ashley Babbitt's history is pertinent to the question...
Okay, fine.
If it's important, okay.
Okay.
Then Kim Potter should go free immediately. Derek Chauvin should go free immediately.
Yeah.
The McMichaels are completely exonerated. Should go free immediately.
Right. I mean, because look, either when these things happen, because for better or worse, we live in a world of social media, and it's all emotion, fine, whatever. Everybody, every single one of us at any point in time could be tried in the court of public opinion, and it could literally happen overnight. You could be a liberal who's down for the cause, and you could make a joke about not wanting to get AIDS while you're in Africa before you get on a plane, and by the time your plane lands, you could have been retweeted like 100,000 times and fired from your job for a joke, even though you agree with a leftist position, okay? That could happen. So if that's...
Well, I mean, the leftists love to say it. The liberals get the bullet, too.
This is true. This is true. So if that's the world that we're going to operate under, fine. But don't be a hypocrite. And look, dear everybody, if you think a messy love triangle is all it takes to indict somebody as an evil person for the rest of their life, because what the AP is doing here is exactly what they accuse us of doing. They're saying, okay, you're saying George Floyd deserved to die because he was a drug addict.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm not, but the point is, that's exactly what they're doing here. They're saying, well, Ashley Babbitt was a bad person, and she had bad intentions, and she deserved to die because of that. Her death was not just justified because she was theoretically breaking and entering into the Capitol, which there's some question about that whole breaking and entering part.
No, there's not.
See, I see what you did there. But look, the point is, pick a lane. And why are they trying to tear down Ashley Babbitt? Well, she's the only person that died that day. A lot of the rest of the narrative has collapsed. So what needs to happen to keep those that are still in their little bubble insulated in that bubble? Well...
lies, more lies, and damn lies.
Exactly. And they've got to tear down Ashley Babbitt as part of that. They've got to show you. And look, you take this shit to the bank. That incident between those two ex-wives and two ex-husbands, that's the worst thing Ashley Babbitt ever did in her life. And you know how I know that?
Because it's the only thing they mentioned in the report.
And it's like, man, that article's like 60 paragraphs long, and like 20 of them are dedicated to that incident, which means that is absolutely the worst thing Ashley Babbitt ever did in her life, which is actually a pretty darn good track record in my never humble opinion. That's a when people write IMHO, I'm like, screw you. IMHO. I am in HO, in my never humble opinion. If you're going to give your opinion, it's not humble.
Yeah,
IMHO.
I don't have humble.
Anyhow, okay, that took a little bit longer than I expected, but here's the other piece of it. As Chris pointed out, there's not actually that much question anymore about whether or not there was a lot of breaking and entering that happened in the Capitol a year ago.
Right, and like we've pointed out on the show before, we've gone over this a couple times recently. We're going to look at the newest Revolver article, and I want you to remember this. Going into this article, the claims that are being made that the FBI was directly involved in attempting to exacerbate the incident on January 6th and basically to facilitate, to cause a riot, right? That would sound extraordinary. That would sound incredible. And I do mean incredible, as in not believable. Increíble, right? Incredible. Except that we're talking about the same FBI that headed up the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping hoax, that headed up the Ukraine Gate investigation hoax, and that headed up the Russia Gate investigation hoax.
Same FBI that temporarily lost.
And that actively ran cover for. Yep. That actively ran cover for Hillary Clinton and Email Gate.
Oh, I was going to say.
The FBI actively helped Hillary Clinton get away with committing high crimes and misdemeanors while in public office against the United States of America, directly related to the activities of espionage and breach of her non-disclosure agreements.
The FBI lost evidence in the Kyle Rittenhouse case?
Oh, and they fabricated evidence in the Kyle Rittenhouse case.
Yeah. We could do this all day.
We could.
And the FBI totally had like 60 agents investigate the noose that wasn't NASCAR a few years ago. They were totally all over that case.
The nuisance.
That's good.
I mean, if there's any doubt in your minds, like I've said, we've also said on this show that the ATF must be abolished, and I would go so far as to say that every current every current and former ATF agent should serve time in federal prison for the crime of having existed as an ATF agent, because the existence of the agency is that counter-constitutional. The FBI actually, in original formation, its original intent and function, was a legitimate function of government. But what it has become is an enemy of the United States of America. The FBI, I mean, I would be hard pressed to show any surprise on my face if I were to see evidence that the FBI is a direct branch of the Chinese Communist government.
I don't know that I go that far.
Boy, I would.
I mean, well, not when it was incepted.
In my professional military intelligence analytical opinion, the actions of the current FBI, and for the last probably 10 to 15 years, are those of foreign agent provocateurs.
Oh, so not as incepted, but in its current incarnation.
Correct.
Okay, well, fair enough.
It's been taken over. And Chris Ray, what a sack of shit he is.
Is there anything that China hasn't taken over at this point? You know, they own, like,
There's
the Chrysler building?
I know.
I mean, what?
Meet Ray Epps, Part 2. Damning new details emerge exposing massive web of unindicted operators at the heart of January 6th. Unindicted operators is an interesting term. They're
might be entirely accurate, though.
And what they're referring to is another habit of the government and the deep state in this kind of propaganda work, to use what are called unindicted co-conspirators. So, 6 weeks ago, Revolver News published a blockbuster investigative report on Ray Epps, a man who, more than any other individual, appears to be the key to unlocking the question of active federal involvement in the so-called Capitol siege of January 6th. On the day, right? On the day, January 6th, we had photos and video coming from the incident showing very clearly that the protesters did not overwhelm and smash down the barricades. The Capitol Police opened those barricades and let them in. Not just let them in, but we've got footage of Capitol Police officers gesturing to usher them in. This way, sir or madam. Right, and then you see when you see the images from inside of the Capitol building, these violent revolutionaries, these evil insurrectionists, are filing neatly down the rows laid out by the velvet ropes. Yes, somebody got in Pelosi's office, still the lectern, but Bullhorn, the Ram's Horns guy or Bullhorn guy or whatever, the MAGA shaman, the Q shaman,
Red, White, and Woad.
Red, White, and Woad. I like that because Woad is blue.
See, it's a good joke.
It's good.
It's a good joke.
It's also a hallucinogen, so careful. But like Capitol Police officers walked into the hearing chamber with him. Right,
except for the one that shot Ashley.
Right, except for him. He was busy murdering. He was busy murdering patriots.
Yeah, because all those people totally wanted to have sex with AOC, even though she was in a different building. I'm sorry. I'm going to reference that one forever.
But they were ushered in. For the most part, they were walking the paths between the red ropes, and it's super, super suspicious that there are days and days of footage from cameras at every angle, and most of it has been actively suppressed by the by operatives of the government. Out of all the thousands of January 6th protesters and thousands of hours of publicly available footage from that fateful day, here we go. Ray Epps has turned out to be perhaps the only person nailed dead to rights confessing on camera to plotting a pre-planned attack on the Capitol. On both January 5th and January 6th, Epps announced multiple times at multiple locations his upcoming plot to breach the U.S. Capitol. He then spent hours attempting to recruit hundreds of others to join him. On top of it all, Epps was seen leading key people and managing key aspects of the initial breach of the Capitol grounds himself.
But remember, Ashley Babbitt had an affair once and got into a fight with the ex-wife over the affair. Remember, pay no attention to Ray Epps. Ashley Babbitt bad.
And so here's a clip. I'll let you guys check that out. I'm going to go ahead and drop you a link to this article in the chat over here. If y'all want to go check out that clip. I'm not going to play the clip right now. It would be one thing if Epps' repeated calls on January 5 to go into the Capitol had simply amounted to bluster. But Epps followed through on his stated mission to shepherd others inside. In clips 4 through 6 above compilation, we see Epps actively orchestrate elements of the very first breach of the Capitol barricades at 12:50, while Trump still had 20 minutes left in his rally speech.
Boy, isn't that interesting?
The timing is very important.
Isn't that just like...
It is noteworthy that this Ray Epps breach occurred just 1 minute after Capitol Police began responding to reports of 2 pipe bombs, which, by the way, have you seen any pictures of the pipe bombs?
Maybe. I don't know. Like, the last year's been a blur. Oh, that's right. The last year has been a blur, and I haven't seen any pictures of the pipe bombs.
This is one of those things. This is like what's-her-face that's running against all the other guys that are running for Georgia governor.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't.
You can't remember her name either, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's because you don't exist as a candidate. If it didn't get on my radar, like I do this every day, right? I know now that it's Candace Taylor because I've had conversations with all these candidates over and over again, except actually for Candace Taylor.
Maybe she'd come on.
You don't count.
Oh, dude, now she's not going to come on. She doesn't count.
Of course she's not going to come on.
Anyhow, pipe bombs.
It is noteworthy that Ray Epps breached pipe bombs located at DNC, and GOP headquarters, respectively, which is also interesting. Rather conveniently, the already handicapped Capitol Police thus had still fewer resources with which to respond to the barricades breach in question. And there's a lot of other stuff going on here, like Pelosi was actively refused when Donald Trump tried to deploy additional security forces on the day, right? I mean,
No, don't need them. I mean, we could totally put up fences when Joe Biden wants to do an inauguration.
Yeah, it's not complicated.
That's fine.
It's not complicated. Pelosi,
we can make troops sleep in sub-zero garages.
Pelosi, who attempted to commit treason in Trump's last few weeks, and I say that advisedly, because she went to the Joint Chiefs and asked, what can we do to prevent Donald Trump from being able to issue orders to conduct a nuclear strike until he leaves office? And the Joint Chiefs told her that's called treason.
Stop talking about it. You're making us uncomfortable, Nancy. You're making us uncomfortable. All right.
So she downscaled the security and basically facilitated. Sorry, the do not disturb. I fixed my do not disturb thing, but it automatically turns off do not disturb at 8:00.
Oh, see, because we're running late because there's too much to get. So let's.
While the pipe bombs turned out to be a dud, you don't say. The Ray Epps breach proved fateful. Today, the official stories told by the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the U.S. Justice Department all depict the apparent Ray Epps orchestrated 1250 initial breach of metal barricades as the Big Bang event. In large part, this description is hardly exaggerated. Indeed, it was the 1250 breach of the Capitol grounds in conjunction with a handful of suspicious individuals ripping down fencing and signage that set in motion the conditions allowing for 1/6 to turn from a rally into a riot. In this report, we will blow open this network of still unindicated key operators who appear to have been at work either with or around Ray Epps during the initial Capitol grounds breach. So,
I might have to break my fast early.
Oh, Sergeant Major will be there when we finish breakfast. Or when we finish this show. See, now I got breakfast on the brain. You slow down. We're working on it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So 6 months later, on June 30, both Revolver and the New York Times published inconvenient stories that encouraged a more aggressive interrogation of the Ray Epps third rail, leading reasonable people to wonder why this publicly identified man on the most wanted list still had no charges filed against him. Now, understand, on June 30, most of the people who were actually arrested in conjunction with the January 6th event, who, by the way, were only ever charged with things like trespassing and a few of them with some kind of like disturbing the peace kind of
destruction
misdemeanor.
Of property type stuff.
Many of them were still sitting in solitary confinement,
or at the very least, jail with no bond.
Most of them were still in solitary confinement. That has also been a major controversy, and the excuse that was used is we don't have enough COVID tests, so we're going to quarantine them for 120 days.
Well, anything, when you're in solitary confinement, I forget which organization came out with it, but a few years ago they said anything over 15 days in solitary confinement should be considered cruel and unusual punishment, because that's where the human mind starts to crack. Like, we're social animals, and when you don't have any socializing for a couple of weeks, it's not good for you. Anyhow, keep going, because this just gets juicier and juicier.
Yeah, it does. So the FBI responded to these important media stories the very next day, but their response was to quietly purge all online Ray Epps files from their website, then switch to a posture of, what? Who? Ray Epps? Never heard of him. Agents of the FBI field office in Phoenix, where Epps lives, have gone so far as to explicitly deny knowledge that Epps even exists. Instead of pursuing Epps, FBI agents have instead pursued journalists who had the temerity to ask Epps in person if he was a government operative. I understand that, but I can't say anything, is all Epps would tell them. Here's a quick visual synopsis of the timeline. Again, I linked the article. Y'all go check that out. Wow, that's our third Russian troll this morning. or mol, or Privyet Tovarish, как дела? And До свидания. But the specter of Ray Epps and the ominous questions his immunity raises loom too large to be memory holed by poorly coordinated efforts of government denial. In light of the above, it is both amusing and symbolically appropriate that despite the FBI's attempt to purge Epps' face from its wanted database and public denials of his existence from authorized agents, the FBI DC field office still features Ray Epps as a wanted man in its current pinned Twitter image. Look closely and you'll find it. If Epps turns out to have been some kind of government operative, which at present is the only clean and simple explanation for his immunity, it is game over for the official MAGA insurrection narrative of 1/6. Epps was the day's loudest riot recruiter and its apparent leader of the very first breach of Capitol grounds. If Ray Epps is a Fed, the insurrection becomes the Fedsurrection in one fell swoop. So, we are way over. And this would seem like crackpot tinfoil conspiracy theories.
Except it really doesn't. We still live in the world where does anybody with half a brain believe Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
I mean,
in solitary confinement, no less, with guards 15 feet away from him.
Is anybody not surprised that Ghislaine Maxwell is still kicking?
Man, there's a lot about the Ghislaine Maxwell thing that's surprising to me. If you ask me,
like the number of names that came out in the trial.
You mean none?
Exactly 0.
You mean how the prosecution could have called, like, I think they said somewhere around 100 witnesses and only called 4, and only 2 of them had direct knowledge of Ghislaine Maxwell?
You mean how the prosecutor whose father is the former intensely corrupt head of the FBI that actively ran cover for the Clintons during the Hillary Clinton email scandal?
What's the name of that?
Comey.
Comey? No. You're bullshitting.
So not only am I certain that Comey has spent quite a great deal of time on Epstein's Island, or at least was paid by Epstein's clients to cover up for those clients in much the same way that he actively covered up for and actively facilitated the crimes of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton didn't mean to do anything wrong when she deleted those 30,000 emails that were on a server she never should have owned in the first place. She didn't mean to do anything wrong. So we're not even going to give her a slap on the wrist. Whoo! Like, okay, again, Ashley Babbitt, remember, she's the piece of shit because she had an affair with a man that she did later marry. Ashley Babbitt was actually charged with the crime, though, wasn't she? The crime was later dismissed, but she was charged with the crime. Hillary Clinton wasn't even charged.
And neither was Epps.
Oh, so far, no.
So if Epps was instructed by the government, I'm reading from the article again, if Epps was instructed by the government to play his part in various recruiting, breaching, and crowd control efforts that day, we would expect many other informants to be set up around him. So I'm going to pull back to the January 6th Commission for a minute. We're looking at the January 6th Commission.
The January 6th witch hunt.
The January 6th witch hunt.
That somehow Sean Hannity is now sucked up into?
Yeah.
Like, guys, when they're subpoenaing journalists to go in front of Congress, this is like, we are right on the edge of Banana Republic territory here, okay? And I'm not being hyperbolic, as we sometimes are on this show. Like, seriously, does anybody believe that Sean Hannity would support an insurrection? This is sort of like when Jeff Sessions was somehow part of the Russia hoax because a senator met with a Russian ambassador. Like, it's almost comical if it's not terrifying in its implications.
Well, and met with versus met. That's a funny trick of the language. It's met and met with is the difference between I ran into you at the comic book convention versus we sat down to dinner to discuss business.
Well, either way,
Sessions met a Russian.
Even if he met with the Russian ambassador, he's a senator.
And it was kind of his job at the time.
Yeah, kind of his job.
So, Adam Schiff is on this committee among several others, and we we could probably go through the
Yeah, but we're
the
actually coming
failings
up on an hour.
and inadequacies of these various shitburgers like Liz Cheney. God, not with your dick. But Adam Schiff is one of the big ones on here. Is one of the big names that we need to pay attention to. In an attempt to frame the activities of last year's January 6th event in the most negative light possible, and to craft this narrative that not only was it an insurrection, but that it was planned, orchestrated, and encouraged by the Trump administration. Adam Schiff, who, let's not forget, in the midst of the Ukraine hoax, read an entirely fabricated transcript of a Trump phone call. Completely false. Right? In the committee.
He sourced the media for it,
into
too.
the record. And then later said, "Oh, well, no, that was an example. It was for the drama and the hyperbole. I didn't think anybody would believe that it was genuine and real." Oh, 'cause you swore it under oath, you son of a whore. So this same whoreson that's played up in this controversy here. Now they're generating text messages where they've taken like long paragraphs of text messages and cut out individual sentences. We're not going to dig into those because I mean we are almost an hour in. But just like in the Russia hoax and the Ukraine hoax and the Rittenhouse trial, sham trial, and the Chauvin trial and every other thing that these shitbags get their hands in, they are falsifying evidence to cause harm. That is a crime, ladies and gentlemen. Fabricating evidence, little Binger, is a crime. Always and everywhere. We're not just talking about lying. We're talking about, if you were to tell a big important lie and then, I don't know, get caught with a bunch of emails about how you fabricated all of the peer-reviewed studies involved in crafting that narrative to intentionally create.
What if you were to lie by omission?
An alarmist,
What if you were to lie by omission?
billion-dollar industry.
And there was this laptop that might have swung the presidential election.
Just left it off.
And you're just like, we're like, no, we can't like verify that. So we're not going to allow the biggest social media platforms in the world. Because the one thing that Twitter is really good for is people share information quickly on Twitter. So Twitter is like, no, that laptop? What laptop? We don't know what you, just like the FBI's like.
Real quick, hey, Beast and String 95. If you're looking for games, you're watching the wrong show. But most recently, I've been playing the absolute dog shit out of some Steampunk 2077.
We do occasionally play video games. That's just not what we're doing here.
Right.
So, but again, stress the point. Remember, Adam Bullshift. He's whatever. He's fine. Nothing to see here. Hillary Clinton. Fine. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
Certainly not a useful chin.
And Ray Epps, whoever he is, nothing to see here.
Does he look like maybe he's a water baby or maybe a little hair lip going on there?
What he looks like to me is the kid that became the hall monitor because he thought that was the best way to get back at the bullies.
I'm going to write you a ticket. Yeah, well, I'm going to go light a cigarette and drive my pretty red Beretta to McDonald's because the food here sucks. Deuces.
Okay. But don't forget. Ashley Babbitt is the piece of shit.
Yeah.
Ashley Babbitt. Because the Revolver has the article about Ray Epps. For better or worse, everybody, even the lowest information voter, knows something about Ashley Babbitt's death. Because, again, she's the only person that died that day, right? She's not the one that needs a degree of investigation, I would argue. Now, if you want to investigate her, fine. I am somebody that believes there is no knowledge that is not also power, and also life-giving and life-affirming. Knowing things is part of how we get ahead as a species. Okay.
Hang on, I'm going to give this one to Steve just because we haven't had one today. Have a good day, y'all, and tell everyone that the media is lying. The media is lying.
But you've got the AP, the Associated Press, they're supposedly the creme de la creme, right? They do a whole big thing where they tell you about the time Ashley Babbitt got into a fight over a lover.
Yeah.
Which is not good. Don't get into fights over lovers. However, anybody that's ever been in love can kind of see, they can see how that's at least a thing that might happen.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say don't get into fights over lovers. That
to not get into fights over lovers.
That's okay. You know what? That's a whole other show.
However,
pacifism is the opposite of decency.
I'm not saying be a pacifist.
No, I know.
Oh, no, never. No, but the AP investigates Ashley Babbitt and Revolver. And I'll be honest, I'd never even heard of Revolver magazine until the first Ray Epps article a couple of months ago.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Revolver.
I've heard of Revolver. I've read a few of their articles before. They're not somebody I've read regularly. They are now.
So, anyhow, yeah. So, Revolver, the magazine I'd never heard of, is the one that's doing the actual deep dives. Actually, looking at what journalists are supposed to do, right? Actually doing the things, the investigative journalism. It's part of why they hate James O'Keefe, right? Because O'Keefe actually does...
Because he's a journalist?
I mean, gotcha journalism, which is what he practices. Like, you are going to make enemies doing gotcha journalism. You just are. Mm-hmm. And that's fair, as long as you accept that on the front end. But actual investigative journalism, that's not what goes on anymore, unless you work for Revolver. But brother, that's almost an hour.
That is an hour.
And look, every January 6th from this point forward is Ashley Babbitt Day. And every January 6th from this point forward, there was not an insurrection. And as more and more...
According to the FBI.
And as more and more information comes out, I am not at all going to be surprised if this is entirely orchestrated by the feds themselves. Like, like how when DeLorean got approached by the FBI and said, hey, if you help us run a cocaine deal, we can save your company. And then,
right.
Or, I don't know, when there was the LARPers that, I looked it up. It was 7 of the 13 who were arrested. We're either worked for the FBI or were informants tangentially to the FBI. And the one guy that decided to turn state's evidence and plead still got like 6 years in prison anyway.
And I hope he gets a good lawyer and eats them alive on appeal, because that's...
Oh, no, brother. When you plead, it's almost impossible to appeal. That's why the state loves giving you plea deals. That's why the state loves giving you plea deals, because it's almost impossible to appeal them.
Yep. So, at the end of the day, the moral of the story is this. Don't talk to cops. Ever.
That's not where I thought you were going. But, dude, if they show up at rallies dressed up as not cops, how do you know you're not talking to one? Boy, that was supposed to be a joke, but I actually just made myself terribly paranoid.
All right. So, if I'm meeting you for the first time in public and we go for the handshake, I'm going to grab your ass. And if I don't find a badge there, I'm going to grab your other cheek. And I'm basically just going to pat you down before I decide that I can talk to you.
Anyhow, that's the show. Happy January 6th. Happy Strike Coming Off Day. And see you tomorrow for everybody's favorite Firearms Friday.
Hallelujah.
Go faff yourself.
Love you.